mixed. Behind this reunion selfie lies an untold story of time, fame, loss, and the lasting legacy of Sons of Anarchy. There are some stories that feel like rebellion. And then there are stories that feel like inheritance. Not freedom. Not escape. Not the open road. Inheritance. The kind written in blood. In silence. In family names. In rules passed down by men who call them brotherhood, even when those rules are slowly killing everyone involved. That is what Sons of Anarchy became. Not just a biker drama. Not just a crime series. Not just a show about engines, denim, guns, leather cuts, and men riding through California with the illusion of control wrapped around them like armor. It became a tragedy about sons. Sons trying to honor fathers. Sons trying to outgrow fathers. Sons trying to survive the damage fathers leave behind. And in that way, it was never really about motorcycles. It was about legacy. That is why this reunion image feels so powerful. Charlie Hunnam standing beside the young Jax Teller. Still beautiful. Still dangerous. Still not fully understanding that the road he is on does not lead outward. It leads inward. Back into the family wound. Katie Seagal facing the younger Gemma again. The queen of charming. The mother who protects with one hand and poisons with the other. Ron Perlman beside Clay Morrow. All force and appetite and aging male authority. Already fighting time even while pretending he owns it. Maggie Siff looking back at Tara. The woman who thought love might still be able to save a man from the world that made him. Kim Coates meeting Tig again. Tommy Flanagan staring at Chibs. That weathered face full of loyalty and old scars. And somewhere in the darker edge of memory, William Lucking. Alan Oney. The ones the years have already taken. That is why Sons of Anarchy does not play like ordinary nostalgia. Because this is not a sunny memory. This is memory with ash on it. This is memory that knows. The men in the frame were never riding toward freedom. They were riding toward consequence. When the series premiered in 2008, it arrived with a very specific energy. Violent. Masculine. Sweaty. Operatic. But underneath the outlaw cool, the show was doing something much older. It was building a modern-day family tragedy. A kind of Hamlet on two wheels, with Jax Teller caught between the dead father whose words still haunted him, the stepfather who had inherited the throne, and the mother whose love was inseparable from manipulation. That is one reason the show lasted. It had action, yes. Betrayal, yes. Gunfire, cartel business, prison arcs, dirty alliances, revenge, club politics, yes. But what kept people coming back was not only the violence. It was the feeling that everyone on this show was trapped inside a family system they could not heal. That is deeper than plot. And that is where the emotion lives. Because Sons of Anarchy gave audiences more than tension. It gave them emotion. Raw, ugly, desperate emotion. The grief of sons. The fear of mothers. The ache of wives and lovers watching men choose loyalty to a club over loyalty to life itself. It gave them meaning. Questions about masculinity, power, fatherhood, corruption, race, loyalty, and whether violence passed down from one generation to the next can ever truly be broken. It gave them attraction, that pull that made the world of charming feel dangerous and irresistible at the same time. It gave them beauty, too. Not polished beauty. Wounded beauty. Chrome in the sunlight. Leather in dust. Funeral black. California heat. The poetry of ruin. It gave them connection because beneath all the outlaw myth, this was still a story about family systems people recognized. And it gave them afterglow, or maybe something darker than afterglow. A residue. A weight you keep carrying after the episode ends. That is why Jack's teller mattered so much. Charlie Hunnam did not play Jax as a simple anti-hero. He played him as a man split in half. One half wanted to believe in his father's vision. The other half was already being shaped by the club's daily reality: blood, retaliation, compromise, tribalism, fear. Jax is compelling because he never looks fully built for the world he inherits. He is too reflective for it, too wounded for it, too capable of tenderness for it. And that tenderness is not weakness. It is the tragedy. Because every time Jax seems close to changing, the machinery around him drags him deeper into becoming what he hates. That is what makes him unforgettable. He is not just a rebel. He is a son trying to rewrite an inheritance, while still being emotionally loyal to it. Charlie Hunnam has remained active long after the series, with IMDb listing recent and current projects including The Search for the Silver Lining, Monster, and other development work into 2025 and 2026. That makes the then and now image especially strong here. Jax may belong to the past, but Hunnam is still moving forward, carrying that role like a scar the audience never forgot. Then there is Gemma. And no matter how much people argue over favorite characters, favorite seasons, favorite betrayals, favorite deaths, Gemma is the earthquake underneath the whole show. Katie Seagal played her with a rare kind of force. Gemma is maternal, but not gentle. Protective, but not safe. Loving, but never clean. She is the keeper of the family story, and the destroyer of it. That is what makes her great. In a lesser show, she would have been written as either monster or martyr. But Sons of Anarchy understood that the most dangerous family figures are often both. Gemma loves fiercely, but her love is possessive, controlling, terrified of loss. And so much of the show's tragedy grows from that. Not because she is evil in a cartoon sense, but because she cannot separate protection from domination. That performance was so strong that Katie Seagal won the 2011 Golden Globe for it. That remains one of the clearest forms of official recognition the series received. And today, the older Gemma image feels even stronger. Because when you imagine Katie Seagal standing beside the Gemma of the early seasons, you are not just looking at an actress revisiting a role. You are looking at power meeting memory. At a woman who once ruled every room in Charming, standing beside the ghost of the mother who could not let her son become free. Then comes Clay Morrow. Ron Perlman gave Clay a terrible dignity. Not moral dignity. Something more primal than that. Authority. The authority of a man who knows his body is aging. His grip is weakening. His legend is under threat. And who therefore becomes more dangerous the closer he feels to irrelevance. Clay is one of the show's clearest truths about masculinity. Men do not become violent only when they feel strong. Sometimes they become most violent when they feel time closing in. That is Clay. A king who can feel his crown slipping. A husband who mistakes control for stability. A father figure who cannot bear the possibility that the son might not need him. Ron Perlman has continued acting steadily, with recent and upcoming credits still visible, including projects like The Gentleman and other current film work. So the reunion image here feels less like a disappearance and more like an aging warlord facing the younger version of his own appetite. And then there is Tara. Maggie Siff's Tara brings one of the deepest emotional currents in the series. Because Tara is the question the whole show cannot answer. Can love pull a man out of inherited violence? Can intelligence, tenderness, profession, and domestic hope really compete with blood loyalty, male bonding, ritual, revenge, and a lifetime of emotional conditioning? Tara is not weak because she wants another life. She is brave because she can see clearly what charming is becoming. And that clarity makes her dangerous to the system. That is one of the most painful truths in Sons of Anarchy. People who can still imagine a cleaner future often become threats to those who have already surrendered to the cycle. Maggie Siff has remained active as well, with current work still appearing on her professional slate, including stage and screen projects into 2026. That gives Tara's imagined reunion image a special sadness, because Tara always represented the future Jax might have had, and Siff's continued presence reminds us how alive that possibility once felt. Kim Coates as Tig brings another kind of ache, because Tig begins as chaos, impulse, loyalty, madness, sex, violence, panic, and damage all firing at once. But over time, the performance grows more bruised. Tig becomes one of the show's best examples of what Sons of Anarchy does well. It lets men who look monstrous become human, without ever pretending they are innocent. That is a difficult line to walk. And Coates walks it. Kim Coates is still working too, with recent and upcoming credits including American Primeval, The Walking Dead, Dead City, and Solo Mio, alongside new film work now in development. Theo Rossi's Juice carries one of the series' saddest emotional notes. Because Juice is not destroyed by being the strongest. He is destroyed by being fragile in a world that cannot tolerate fragility. That matters. Because Sons of Anarchy is often remembered for its swagger. But one of its recurring themes is what happens to men who cannot fully perform the version of masculinity their environment demands. Juice is fear, need, shame, isolation. He is the proof that the club's language of brotherhood does not always leave room for weakness. And when weakness has nowhere to go, it curdles into betrayal, panic, and collapse. Tommy Flanagan Chibs carries a different pain. He feels like the older version of the brotherhood myth, scarred, loyal, tragic, still standing because standing is what is left. That is one reason the show endures. It gives different faces to male suffering. The prince, the queen mother, the aging king, the wounded wife, the clown, the fragile son, the scarred survivor. That is mythology, even if it is wearing biker cuts instead of crowns. And that brings us to loss. Because time has already reached into the Sons of Anarchy world too. Alan O'Neill, who played Hugh, died in 2018 at age 47, as reported by Variety and Deadline. And William Lucking, who played old-school samcro patriarch Piney Winston, died in 2021 at age 80. Those losses matter because they fit the show's emotional register so well. This was always a story about older codes fading, older men disappearing, and the costs of carrying violence across generations. So who is still active? A substantial number of the show's most recognizable faces remain active in film, television, or public life around the franchise's legacy. Charlie Hunnam, Katie Seagal, Ron Perlman, Kim Coates, Theo Rossi, Tommy Flanagan, and others continue to work. The series itself also lived on through its universe expansion, with Mayans MC, running from 2018 to 2023, which confirms how durable the world of Charming proved to be beyond the original finale. And now comes the larger question. Has any show surpassed Sons of Anarchy? If we are talking about critical prestige in the broadest possible sense, there are many series with heavier awards footprints. If we are talking about subtle realism, there are more restrained crime dramas. If we are talking about perfect consistency, even fans of Sons of Anarchy usually admit the show could be excessive, chaotic, melodramatic, sometimes almost operatic in its violence and emotional turns. But that may be exactly why it still matters. Because Sons of Anarchy was never trying to be neat. It was trying to be felt. And in that category, in emotional impact, outlaw mythology, family tragedy, masculine decay, and the spectacle of inherited damage, it becomes much harder to replace. FX's own description frames the series around the club's effort to protect both its business and the town of Charming. But over time, the show reveals the cost of that protection myth. The club does not simply defend Charming, it also infects everything around it. That contradiction is one of the show's deepest strengths. That is where the value at the center of the story lives. Not in biker cool. Not in outlaw fantasy. Not even in the romance of brotherhood. But in a harsher truth. That people can inherit systems of love. That are also systems of destruction. That fathers can pass down codes. That feel sacred. Even when those codes are killing their sons. That loyalty, when worshipped too blindly, can become another word for captivity. And that is why the selfie with time concept works so well here. If the cast could truly gather in one frame. If Jax, Gemma, Clay, Tara, Tig, Juice, Chibs, and Piney could all stand beside the actors who played them. It would not just be a reunion photo. It would be a family portrait. Of damage. A portrait of beauty meeting ruin. Of youth meeting consequence. Of men who thought the road meant freedom. Meeting the older faces that now prove the road was always taking them somewhere else. Toward grief. Toward repetition. Toward the father wound they never fully escaped. And maybe that is the final legacy of Sons of Anarchy. It did not merely show men breaking the law. It showed what happens when a whole emotional world is built around violence, loyalty, pride, and unresolved inheritance. It showed how hard it is to raise sons in a culture that mistakes hardness for strength. It showed how mothers can become empires, how fathers can become ghosts, how clubs can become churches for wounded men, and how love, when trapped inside fear, can become one more weapon. So if one day these actors could really stand shoulder to shoulder with their younger selves, Charlie with Jax, Katie with Gemma, Ron with Clay, Maggie with Tara, Kim with Tig, Theo with Juice, the living and the lost in the same impossible frame, the image would say more than nostalgia. It would say, here is what loyalty costs. Here is what inheritance does. Here is what time reveals. And here is what still remains when the engines go quiet. The longing remains. The guilt remains. The blood remains. The love remains. The damage remains. And most of all, the family remains. Even when it should not. Do you think Sons of Anarchy is ultimately a story about outlaw freedom, or about inherited family damage disguised as brotherhood? Which character feels the most tragic to you when you imagine their younger and older versions standing side by side? Has any series truly surpassed Sons of Anarchy in turning masculinity, loyalty, and violence into such an emotional family tragedy?